if I can give you guys a brief overview of church history when it comes to celibacy, the two primary examples of celibacy that we get, or the idea of celibacy, is from Jesus himself and from Paul the apostle primarily. And, both live, as eunuchs, as the Roman Catholics would like to say, because they were not married. Jesus was not married. Paul the apostle, as far as we know, was not married, and they didn't have sex. They abstained from sexual activity. What about the other Christians around that time? Is that an umbrella regulation? Well, let's look. Peter was married. Philip the evangelist had four daughters. We know he had to procreate those four daughters. That means he was married. And many church historians has recorded and agreed that some of the apostles were married. So that is, a brief introduction to, like, from the biblical record of what we know, who was married and who was not. But however, the early church did not take a hard line position on celibacy yet. They understood the doctrine of marriage. They understood the sanctity of life. They understood the singleness and marriage and the differences and the hardships of both. But they didn't like put their flag on hardcore celibacy as we see in early church documents. There was episodes, from historical pre-Roman Catholic thinkers, or episodes in early church, that you could see that they pushed for the modern position of the Roman Catholic position of celibacy. You know what I mean? There was episodes where they did push that, but however, that was not the majority. Those kind of episodes were the minority. You know what I mean? The early church was mostly okay with church leaders being married and having kids. It was not until the year 1139 AD, so like 1,039 years later after Jesus, it was at a church council when the Roman Catholic Church, when it formed and got dominant. That's when they got together and took the dominant position of celibacy for its priest, meaning for church leaders. And it was not until the Reformation church reaffirmed the doctrine of total celibacy for its priests, aka church leaders. And that was because of the context of the Reformation. Reformation, as we know, we understand the most popular themes: sola scriptura, recovery of the gospel, the five solas, justification by faith alone, all those things. But the one thing we do miss in the Reformation, that it was recovered or rediscovered, was the proper biblical understanding of celibacy, aka this touches all kinds of subjects like marriage. So the view was that even though God created sex, the Roman Catholics understood why God created sex. The Roman Catholics understood, marriage. They even elevated marriage to the sense that it was one of the sacraments, right? One of the seven sacraments of the Holy Roman Empire, the Holy Roman Church. At that time of the Reformation, they understood marriage. So I'm not saying they didn't understand it. You know what I mean? They told their leaders not to have sex, not to. If you want to be a leader in the Church of Rome, you cannot have sex and you cannot get married. Even though many popes were married, many popes descended, meaning their father was popes. How can you be a son of a pope and then be a pope at the same time? Meaning your father had to have you, had to be married somehow. It wasn't until 1139 this changed. It wasn't until the 1500s when they reaffirmed, I think the Council of Trent actually, when they reaffirmed the doctrine of celibacy. You know what I mean? And the reformers was like, we got to bring the gospel back into the marriage bedroom. There's something wrong here. Since 1139, the Roman Catholic Church, in a sense, they robbed the world of the biblical idea of marriage, and they failed to properly define marriage. They failed to uplift it and encourage it, and they just robbed the world in a sense. And the reformers, they rejected this. They rejected the doctrine of clerical celibacy. They rejected the idea that marriage was an ordinance in the church. They even went as far to say, you know what? They rejected the Roman Catholic position that marriage was somehow subordinate to the doctrine of celibacy, meaning celibacy is up here, meaning you're holier,
right,
if you're celibate. And even though marriage is a sacrament, but it's meant for those people, you know what I mean? You got that going on. So the reformers rejected that, and they said that's not Bible, that's not scripture. We need to recover this.
Right.
We need to reform this. So they saw marriage as an institution by God. They insisted that marriage was essential to theology, which fascinated me, because it's like you can't have theology, a proper approach to theology, without a proper doctrine of marriage.